About a week ago, I made a track with 300 people I'd never met before, a string orchestra and a lawnmower. The submissions were curated by my friend Kellen, I arranged it, and Jake mixed it. We called this piece Music by 300 Strangers. To check it out, go to the links in the video description down below. Hi there, this is going to be my last MB300S video for the time being, but do stick around because I'm going to announce some gift winners later on, those who have gone above and beyond in the cause of this amazing, epic, kind of musical experiment, if you will. Now, in answer to a lot of the comments that have been put beneath, and thank you so much for all of your support surrounding this project, for those who contributed, but also those who have been just watching and encouraging us, the main questions centered around Jake Jackson's seminal work on this project, his mix. So what I thought I'd do is get Jake Jackson online, he's behind me here.
Hello.
To talk us through the incredibly complex process. Now, let's not just forget, this is not only 381 bits of audio, 381 sources, it's also 381 locations, 381 different microphone setups, different levels of engineering chops, background noise. Quite a daunting prospect for you, Jake, was it not? Hello, by the way.
Hello again. Yes, it was daunting. I mean, fortunately, the basis of this track is pianos, and you know, if you're going to record a piano for this, then hopefully you're kind of going to know it's going to turn out pretty good. It was nice to have things in stereo, so that was cool. I ended up taking out frequencies here and there, but nothing like as much as it could have been, I don't think. You've got a good team of people out there, Christian. That's all I can say.
Fantastic. Good news. So let me just kind of take you through where I signed off to Jake. I organised the submissions into the style of playing, the instruments that we're playing. And for example, with the pianos, we had pianos that were kind of motoring along in the top region, and then pianos that were motoring along playing the chords and the bass notes. I basically organised those. It's a little bit difficult to see because these are basically bounced in place, but these are the actual regions, these ones in the middle there. And what I did is organise them kind of into vignettes of the different instrument groups with a massive whopping great rinse right at the end. And we had the main kind of meat and taters of the players, the accompanists, if you will, like rhythm there. We have our orchestra there, our kind of virtual orchestra of players, along with what I refer to as pylons down here, which are kind of just moments that really kind of pepper the landscape with electrical pylons, but actually, you know, they're just kind of, they're not just ugly things, like exciting things and beautiful melodic phrases as well. Sent them to Jake in big batches, in groups. Say, for example, the piano motors I sent to him with the view that basically there was probably going to be a lot of housework that Jake needed to do, so didn't need to get everything straight away. And
not having it at once was great. If you're going to get 380 things at once, then that is suddenly you can't see the wood for the trees. But having things in groups of like 30 felt like I was winning. I'd get one batch done and then I could work on the next batch, which was a really nice way of working. Actually, it worked out great.
And for me, what was really fun about it was that I was able to basically commit and go, well, listen, you've already sent that to Jake. Let's not complicate matters. You'll see that some aren't bounced in place. So these kind of tracks, I did literally every single track Jake has got, and we've got this great system with the numbering. And then tracks like these, I just bounced into stereo. I think something you have to adopt on a project of this scale is the slightly old-fashioned thing of committing to take bouncing stuff down. Another example is the rhythm section here. I like the way it sounded. I know that Jake was probably going to do some stuff with it, but he didn't need to kind of take it to pieces and put it, or rather you didn't need to take it to pieces to put it back together again. And likewise with these pylons, I simply bounce those down per instrument group, if you will. And that's, you know, what you would refer to as separation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you would.
What I'd like to do next is I'd like to actually play you, because what I also did with Jake is provide you with a reference mix. And that's something maybe we could talk about after just playing the reference mix through, which is basically, I didn't add I usually would add reverbs and stuff like that, but I just didn't even have time for that. So my job was balancing the instruments and arranging them and editing them into something that would kind of become a cohesive piece of music. And then it was really kind of over to you, Jake, with a simple brief of just make it fucking massive. But first, let's hear what I gave to Jake. Right, Jake. So how important is a reference mix for you?
A reference mix is really important. It gives me an insight into your mind and into what you're aiming for. Really, I mean, you spend a lot of time writing it or producing it in this sense, and it would be a miss of me if I was to just pull the faders down and then just kind of ignore what you'd spent days on, because I've seen that happen. I've been there, and I'm like, what I may do might be better, but it's not better if you don't like it. So it's like I might as well have something that I'm aiming for, and it also, on a kind of other level, it gives me something to beat as well. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, if it doesn't sound as good, then I'm doing something wrong, but also like you're not going to ask me to do it again. So it's useful to have something that you know you have to beat better.
I think that the crucial thing that I think that again is a trap that I've fallen down and seen other people fall down is that what you must also present your engineer with is when you pull up the multi-tracks, it must in some form resemble the reference mix that you're provided with. So it's called Unity. So what I'll often do is, if I've done any kind of extreme panning, I will recenter everything, particularly the stereo tracks. I'll remove the reverbs, but I will bounce everything at the level that it's meant to be. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of either normalizing each signal or going, well, that little shaker signal is so quiet, they're not even going to be able to see the waveform. I'm going to boost that up. Because what you're then faced with, Jake, is just like, well, how you're basically having to put the balance rather, back together again, which takes up valuable time.
It does. I mean, you know, if that's kind of what you want, and you want someone to start completely fresh on it, then fine. But more often than not, there's not the time.
There isn't that requirement. There isn't that kind of noise ratio that you're worried about in the good old tape days of having something that's just a very quiet signal on one of the tracks.
If you have to turn it up 20 dB, you'll hear some noise because it's not using that many bits and samples, but it'll be fine in the mix. It's important that you send a multi-track that matches as much as possible the guide mix, for sure.
So, Jake, could you take us through the initial stages? You know, do you basically have to set everything up from scratch, or do you work from templates?
No, I start with a template. I start with a template that, if you look at the screen now, I have a template that has 9 reverbs in it, a couple of delays, master, and all the routing, basically. So it's a case of my favourite reverbs. I've got start with a nice altiverb, my favourite altiverb, R2 surround. It's in stereo, this one, but there's an R2 there. We've got a plate, another plate, a long kind of cathedral kind of one, effecty kind of reverb, a room reverb, a random hall reverb, and a kind of weird delay reverb, and then a straight ahead ping pong delay that's kind of 8th note ping pong delay, and a delay. So I start, this is a stereo mix without stems. Nice, simple like that. The routing is simple. It's just everything goes to the mix, then that mix feeds through the master and goes through to mastering, so I can record a mixed version and a mastered mix as well, so I can record 2 versions. Yes, I mean, I tweak what's in the settings on those EQ, on those reverbs, I beg your pardon, once I get started with the mix. But if I have a template, then it's great. It saves me 2 or 3 minutes.
Hits the ground running.
It might even save me an hour. You know, like it's you're thinking about which reverb, and it's all labelled as I need to find it. I know that the random halls are number 8. I know that my main halls are number 1. I know that a plate's on 3 or 4. It's just really quick. I get really frustrated at myself, and I get very time conscious, and I want to be mixing, not faffing around in a mix. So, like, right, if I've got a template, then great.
It's almost like walking into a virtual studio. It's like you know where everything's patched and hardwired to, and
I go into a lot of studios. I go into a lot of like professional recording studios. I go to a lot of people's homes and stuff to mix, and that is the thing that takes time, is getting your head into the space, the sound of the room, what's on their system, where it's the order in which they've got the stuff, where, you know, like where you'll find it. And having your own space is like, whether that's a kind of studio like this or it is just like your template, it's such a great way of starting. You can switch the computer on. Once it's booted, you're then working straight away, which is a great way.
I think that what I've somewhat naively done over the years is gone, oh, you shouldn't really use that reverb again because you use it on everything. And it's like, no one ever points that out.
No, because the source material is always different, so therefore they don't really know it's the same reverb. And I've thought about that as well. I've thought, should I really be using the same? Should I really? Come on, this is a cheat, but actually it works. It's kind of essentially 70s my sound, really. And if I do stray away from it, then I'm always cursing myself because it's never sounding quite as good.
So you started receiving stuff from me. What are your housekeeping measures?
I mean, first of all, it's just literally just import audio. and make sure they all start at the same place, which looking at the screen I don't anymore because I've chopped out a lot of the gaps just to make it easier on the eye, so I can see if I'm looking for something or other, there's less things to look at, less tracks to go and find out. If I hear a click or a splat or a sound and I'm trying to work out where it is, I can look at the waveform and narrow it down much more quickly, particularly with a massive template like this or massive session like this. So that's the first job. And then the second job is literally listen to each individual element. First of all, make it sound really good. Add the reverb on it you want, a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, and then maybe not too much panning at this stage. And I think that a mix should be made up of the finest quality ingredients. The best chefs use the best ingredients, and so the best mix, I think, should have the best audio ingredients.
So when you're going through each individual sound, you're looking for the best aspects of that.
To a certain degree, I'm imagining it that if that's the one thing only in the mix, then I want it to sound really good.
It's wonderful about working with a mix engineer, particularly a mix engineer who hasn't maybe tracked it, is that there's no ego attached to each individual sound. And particularly when working remotely like this, I don't hear that you're taking the cores out of my apples.
No.
Which obviously you don't cook the apples with the cores in, clearing the mud off the potato, keeping it on that kind of ingredients thing. And you're bringing the best out of every ingredient. It's not only having the best ingredients, it's bringing the best out of those, which can be agonizing for this sound is really perfect and please don't chop all the bass off it because I love its warmth and all of that kind of stuff.
No.
Is that something you come up against when people are mixing with you?
Absolutely. I don't think I've been burnt before where I've gone too far and changed the sound too much, and I know not to do that. I may think it's better, but better is in whose eyes, and if I'm not the client, then it's not better, then it's not better, So I think it's important to do that, but there are things you can do just to keep the original flavour of the ingredient but then make it sound even better, and that's what I tend to do. Is once I've then got a balance, I might then go through and do the panning at that point. That you were given 380 and you gave it to me in about 150, I think. So there's some things that are obviously still big, and there's a few things obviously that combine together. I needed to obviously make that panning thing work to give it space and size, and we'll talk about that in some detail in a minute, but that's not what I do first, because the idea is to try and get every ingredient to its best quality, and then I will then go through and start the kind of mix process and balance and that kind of stuff.
When talking about kind of getting the best out of the ingredients, is it mostly subtractive?
It is corrective first. So if there's a lot of woofy kind of bottom end, let's say from people recording it at home
next to a high street,
exactly. So there's that, or there might be that you're kind of you're in a room that's got quite a lot of bottom end in it because of or the you haven't got the greatest cradle for your mic and that kind of stuff, and it's kind of just picking up some vibrations and the bottom end. So I might do that, and then if it's particularly like harsh, then I might do that too, and then it's kind of additional or subtractive depending on what I think makes the sound nice, really.
Your job title is that of engineer, so there's also a degree of structural integrity as well. So things like digital clicks are something that you are on the lookout for. Anomalies that don't belong in the mix that you're checking out for. And I believe you had to do quite a lot.
Yeah, I think you didn't have the time to go through and edit every single edit. Because you ended up chopping it up and to make it into that structure, I kind of knew that was likely to happen, so I'm very quick and do that, and I could go through and leave ones that were kind of cool and take out ones that weren't there. But it made more sense for me to go and do that because I could actually, it's much easier for me to see what was going on at that point.
One of the issues that I had here, actually, just to take you through this here, is that what I did is I did a degree of kind of automation within these sets of instruments here. So let's just see if we can find that. Yeah, so there's the automation. I didn't want it to be just a sea of sound. I wanted it to be more like a pod of dolphins with the occasional kind of back or fin rearing through, breaking through the water, and the occasional kind of burst of air through their head noses. So I did a bit of that, but also used the various different fade utilities of Logic to also bring things gradually in. So when it came to suddenly doing these corrective fades here, I couldn't just lasso everything and give it a kind of a standard. So I was aware that Jake was going to have his work.
Indeed, but it gave me it's a bit of a perverse way of looking at it, but it actually meant I had to go in and just got to know it better, because I'd have to go in and just look at it and say, oh, what was that? But also then I knew where the sounds were. So I knew roughly where, if it was a kind of cool piano kind of vibey thing, I knew that was about a third of the way down. So I was cursing it, but at the same time, it was quite good because I could go through and go, oh, that's where that is. I want that. Shall I run you through a couple of the sounds, the kind of thing that I
Sure.
did? The start and the end of the piece. First of all, you can see I put a little compressor on it. We're just doing a little dB or something here and there, just to even out some of your unevenness.
What are you saying, Jake?
There's an EQ. There's a little bit of EQ, not much again. Just wanted a bit more of the boo, and then a bit of the brightness, and then you can hear it with the reverb. There you go. Just put a bit of reverb on it. This one here is quite interesting. It's got you can see it's took out some of the bottom end, bit of brightness, and I put this cool motion on this one to move it around. So this features heavily in the guitar section, and I put a bit of compressor on this one. Didn't put an EQ on it because I liked the way it sounded. So it was not always. It's not always about It was, if it was the way it sounded, great. That's cool. And a bit of my random hall on it. It's a cool kind of wah guitar. That features heavily in that little guitar section. Lovely. And again, this one didn't put any EQ on it because I liked it. It's nice, and it's just got a bit of reverb on it. There we go, little music box. Again, took quite a lot of bottom end off here. I ended up doing that quite a lot, actually, taking off the bottom end because I wanted to make space for the bass. And particularly with a lot of pianos, there's a lot of low end information in a piano. So I rolled off a bit, not all of them, but just some of them, ones that were bass heavy. They didn't really need the bass information. They had some cool stuff in the top hand, and
yeah, because they carry bass like even in the top octave.
They do, a massive. Of course they do, yeah. And I think that's where pianos really struggle. So it's a case of just using the bottom end sparingly in the pianos particularly.
So why don't we talk about panning? Because I presume you did a bit of panning before presenting me with Pass 1.
I think I did a bit more of that after that. I certainly tried to find things that were opposing sometimes.
You were kind of trying to find spouses.
Exactly.
They call it, what's it called? Quantum entanglement, the relationship between two electrons. Something that people will be familiar with is the way that you have that interrelationship between backing vocals or tracked vocals.
Yeah, absolutely. There we go. This is a good example. So I've got here in this section that sort of happens around bar kind of 20, I've got a lovely little glass piano here. It's on the left hand side, and then on the right hand side is a xylophone. So it's they're sisters, but they're brother and sister, but they do separate things. But having them on each side just gives us that really nice. And that's one of those things that really makes sound really interesting, and also gives it space for the other more melodic stuff to come down the middle.
Jake and I, we've been collaborating for many, many years, and there's a great trust and a great kind of language between us, great understanding. So what Jake does is just a series of passes, and just so that you don't go down a crazy blind alley for 4 days and have to do some massive reversal. You have to kind of trust that they know that you're listening to the first pass, and you're not expecting, So this is not fait accompli, that's understood. It's more, is this the right direction? And in fact, what we did is Jake and I recorded our first discussion just after I listened to the first pass of the music. So let's just run down the first pass of the music, and then I'll kind of roll VT on the discussion we have, and then we'll return after that first pass discussion. Well done.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm
Cheers.
all right, thanks. How are you? Cheers. Cheers.
Are you working into the evening?
Alcohol-free Nanny State is excellent alcohol-free beer. This one I'm just a bit of free advertising. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, really good. I'm really glad to have kind of finished my hands-on bit.
Yeah, I'm pleased to have finished the kind of the mega kind of like just put it in order kind of bit, and now I can get onto the actual like mixy bit.
There were basically two tracks that were problematic out of the 381.
Right.
I've not used like all of the stems from everyone, but I've definitely used everyone who has submitted, which is pretty incredible, really.
Yeah, well, you've given it to me in about 150 tracks, which is plenty.
Plenty to be getting on with. Great.
Yes.
Well, and I've listened to your first pass, and I just think it's sen-fucking-sational.
Oh,
And you've definitely got the right idea.
good.
I've got a general note. I can just leave you a general note, or I could speak through each section specifically.
I think at this stage, I reckon you should give me a general note for now, and then
Okay.
I will take that, and then we can go more specific once I've done your general note, because I think that's more for the right now. Still,
It's more creative for you as well.
yeah.
So what I would suggest is a general note and two little case studies for you to look at. So for me, I think it's perfect up until bar 19. I think it's like it's the right. It just really gets my juices going. It's like really it's like almost quite nerve wracking to listen to. It's just amazing, and you've got the balance with the pylons just perfect. From bar 19, we just start to lose the motors.
Okay, more motors, right,
and then there's just points where they've really gone. So
Okay.
I just got two case studies. The guitar section from 43 to 51.
Yeah.
That's like the reverse of what I imagine the mix to be, in the
Okay,
sense
fine.
that I can really hear the thing that we did, which we're not talking about yet. But like the guitars need to be like splang in your face.
Oh,
So
okay, right, fine.
I would say my reference is very good there.
Fine. So 43
But in
there should be-
general, from 19 onwards, we're losing the motors.
And when you say motors, just so I know what you mean, you're talking about the pianos, are you?
The ones that I sent to you in folders called motors.
Okay, fine. I've kind of lost those folders though, so I'll work it out. That's fine. I'll look at what they're called. And
It's all the rhythmic counterpoint
fine.
stuff.
Yeah. Rhythmic
Basically.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I think another good case in point, which isn't just a simple kind of push those up, push that down, is the synth section from 27 to 35, which is when you've got that big melodic thing. I think there's an opportunity for, yes, push the motors up, which are the synths, but also maybe let the thing that's doing the melody take the melody and then answer it with the motors. So it's a little bit more creative. And then just some pointers. The orchestral session from 35 to 43, you know, where it goes a bit Penguin Cafe. It just feels a little bit dry and muddy there. I just think we need to just separate stuff a little bit more.
Yeah,
And-
that bit I haven't spent much time on because I got
That's
that
the most
today,
difficult
so-
bit, I think. Yeah. And just this you're not going to get from my reference before that mental bit with all the full tracks coming in. 57, it's just 2 bars, 57 to 59. There's a vocal thing that needs to feel like a swell up and then again a pull the rug under. But it also needs to kind of... the vocal level needs to match the preceding section, because at the moment it feels like it drops and then it and
You
then
don't want
yeah,
want less of a drop there.
yeah, it feels like it should feel like, what? You know, that's what I'm thinking. We're giving too much emphasis on the very beautiful thing that we're not talking about, and then the synths are. I think it's not just a question of just pushing the synth motors up. It's about actually playing the melodic and emphasis. So it's about ridey, ride.
Yeah, of course. That's cool. I haven't done much rides, in fact. So that's the kind of I've just done a kind of basic balance at this stage. So that would explain that. Apart from a few, and the back half is the back section is sounding.
Yeah, again, I really like the minute all of the kind of pianos and stuff are coming back in. I just don't really hear them anymore.
Right.
Like the big kind of when you do
That might be because we've got like about 200 things going on.
Yeah, but I mean, if you just listen to my reference, I'm not giving as much to those orchestral swells.
Right, okay, fine.
You're making
fine. I thought you said...
You're making a thing out of those, which is, if anything, that they could be ridden out a bit, but I just really need to hear da-da-da-da-da, even if it's slightly chaotic, all of the motor tracks.
Motors. Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool.
And then, I mean, when it really, when the drums come in and stuff, I just think it sounds great. I think
wicked.
That's
okay, great. Okay,
fantastic. And the outro sounds good to me as well.
I've kind of tweaked the ending for you, and that kind of, just made a few. I've done a few.
Well, it's now listenable.
Yeah, yeah. I've made a few production decisions. I might have sorted out quite a few little clicks and things from your edits that needed looking at.
Yes. I was hoping you were going to do that because I certainly wasn't.
I could kind of, I spotted that. I need to have a little word with you about your editing. A little bit of timing here and there. I think you might have been a bit generous with your MIDI when you asked for it to be a little bit loose. I would have preferred it a little bit tighter in places, but it's fine.
He's a hard taskmaster, is our Jake.
Well, to be fair, the first thing I timed was the something called Christian Henson Pulses. Only the first. Which one did I move?
Basically, until you can't hear it anymore.
I made one edit on a fourth one just to put them a bit ahead, and it just made. But I put the piano because I wanted to just settle in that rhythm before it started going too much. But
okay, fair enough.
The things a mixed engineer does these days now that you can. In the olden days with the tape machine, I couldn't do it. But
no.
in fact, this never would have worked with a tape machine. imagine 300. Imagine DPD turning up at your door with 300 multi-tracks. Mr. Henson, I've got a delivery for you.
That's brilliant. But I can hear that you're getting into it, and it's it really is it is pretty momentous, isn't it?
Oh, it's extraordinary. It really is.
If anything, that orchestral session that I talked of, the orchestral bit from 35 to 43, that felt a little bit kind of clumped here, and I'm wondering whether we can be, and there's that kind of subtractive EQ as well, just whatever's people's good bits.
I've been just in case you're interested for notes, I've done a lot of scooping out of bottom end of stuff because there's so much going on. I've pretty much all the way down. I've done a lot of much more than I normally would do. Is take things out just so to try and make space for the bottom end, particularly because it's so much of it and that kind of stuff. So I've where pianos have got bottom end but don't need it, I've taken it away and that kind of stuff.
Great, that's exactly what I was expecting. Brilliant.
It needs to really just because of life really. It's so big, this session. I mean it is massive. I've done big sessions before for film mixes, but they're with stems. They're not with this number of individual tracks that have all got to be heard.
People recorded. I reckon definitely the largest number of locations you've had to mix.
Oh, by about 379, yeah. But it's so exciting and it's so good, and it's one of those pieces that you just want to kind of keep working at. So it's
oh, great, mate.
Fantastic. It's cool.
I mean, it's a long. I'm honestly, often I act up for camera, but the when I hit play on that first vlog this week of loading it in and hitting play, that's what my face looks like when I do a panic attack. So I'm actually not showing any emotion. It's all bottled. It's all going on. It's what was I thinking? But I've let the kind of Spitfire team know today that it is quite an astonishing piece of music that's been. It's just incredible what people come up with, and that main melodic line, not telling what it is, but it's just a great motif for the whole thing.
It's really beautiful. I mean, at the end, I've pushed it nice and loud, and I think it really helps soar it over the top. And I really like it, so it's cool. And there's some wicked bits. I mean, I love the didgeridoo.
Yes.
We love the didgeridoo. There's no didgeridoo. It's all didgeridoo.
Oh, I just want you to listen to something. Okay, can you just run it and I'll go stop.
Where from the top?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so do you hear not that piano line, the second piano line, but do you hear the thing going? Ooh, ooh. It's a lawnmower.
Is it?
It's a lawnmower.
It's very cool. I like that. I was playing with that sound today. Actually, just timing it a little bit, but it's lovely. This one here, it's called Machinery Mayhem. I'll give it a nice long reverb. It's cool. It's wicked. I really like it. A little bit of top end and a bit of thing. Any other sounds you want to just pick out and have a listen? I like the sax solo at the end very much.
Of course you fucking do.
I might have put a bit of reverb on that just for you.
I like opera singer.
Yes.
And I love the flugelhorn in the middle of. I think that could be a little bit more reverby.
Oh, okay, yeah, fine, yeah. And there's some glorious stuff in there. There's something in the middle. I can't remember what it was around here. It's great. There's a harmonica. I like that one. Maybe it's the melodica. One of those.
Melodica, I think. Yeah.
There's an excellent bit of. I think there is a bit of harmonica too as well, but it's excellent and it's a lot of fun, isn't it? Blimey.
The question I was going to ask you, Jake, is. So I think I could easily make a 20-minute track out of this.
Yes.
I'm just wondering whether that's something we could propose to the team of, like, kind of making it an extended thing and possibly making it into like an EP or something might be quite nice.
I started listening to Steve Reich's music for 18 musicians as a recommendation of your blog and enjoy it very much. And I think all these sections could be at least 2 or 3 times longer. And I think you could certainly use the same structure we got here, but make it longer. And I think for me, I'm just getting into a section and it goes away. So I think it's definitely we definitely could do. Just the only thing I'd ask is for you to do your edits better. All these clicks, no, it's fine. But you need to work out how best to do that. Yeah. But I think taking what you've done and extending it would be great. I think it'd be really nice. I think it would be a bit more, bit more of that character to be evolving not quite as quickly.
Yeah, and I think you'd get a chance to then really hear everything as well.
I think I could certainly then you could bring things in and out a lot more because now it's like it is a bit like chunk. But I've tried to make space for everything, but it would be very cool, very very cool. I think, and I'd like to do a 5.1 mix, which I can do very easily because I can just turn this template into a 5.1 mix and just pan things differently. I think it'd be very cool. So,
right,
I've just got to think we could do that. But I think it'd be great. I think we should definitely do as much as we can with it. Really, I mean, I think.
Well, it just feels like treasure to me. It feels like
it's completely unique, and I think it's. I think when people hear it, I think it'll. I think it'll astound quite a lot of people because it's suddenly like it's a kind of like. Where's this come from? And I mean, hats off to you for the amount of production you've put into it.
Oh, thanks, mate.
Spectacular, because I mean, looking at that, I mean, it's bad enough mixing it, but like looking at those full length tracks and doing that, blimey, no, thank you. So yeah, good work, nice.
Cheers, pal, mate. Right, so Jake, so the main kind of key points were that I wanted a more of a sense of the motors, and that's I guess it probably was the difficult thing for you is I want you to keep it epic. It's very. With the epic, you'd possibly want to concentrate on the more melodic, the more ambient elements, as opposed to these little ticking motors. So that I guess that was a challenging direction to give you.
Yeah, it was. I guess I was trying to make it a little bit more sectional. Is perhaps the wrong way of saying it, but I was. I think because we'd heard the motors, I was trying to do some other things, but also I didn't make enough of the different sections, so we spent a lot of time on the guitar section and on the orchestral section and things like that. Yeah. And it was really helped having them in different groups because I could put them all in the same area and then look at take those 30 tracks, for example, of the orchestral section and work on it till it was right, Yeah.
And so because I hadn't included reverbs in your reference mix, nor indeed in printed reverbs in the multi-tracks, there was also a stylistic choice that I had made that we communicated, which was the idea that these sections were gonna cut hard. So it's not just that the edit was hard, but it was also the reverb disappeared with them, almost like a DJ mixer.
Exactly, and you can see those sections on the screen here. You can see how I've drawn some of the reverbs out, and that's purely for that section. Yeah, but for example, let's look here. After this big bit, it goes to one piano that's got its own reverb on it. So you really hear, the all the reverb stop there.
And then the artistic reason behind that was that I felt that there was just no way that your brain was going to be able to decode 381 tracks. So for me, it was all about contrast. And would you agree, Jake, that the sense of scale, the best way of achieving it is through contrast and dynamic?
Yes, I mean, I think so. I think certainly the contrast, dynamic, and the pans was important to give it that sense of scale and size. Absolutely. I mean, it needed to be a dynamic mix. But if it had been, because if it had been loud for 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes, then it would have just been like, it made no sense. But to have those crescendos and structure like you did makes it interesting as well.
Now, we passed through Pass 2 and Pass 3. I think the final mix was Mix 4, which was very similar. I mean, like almost virtually identical to Mix 3. And basically what we then started going is into real specifics. I remember, for example, talking to you about a soprano sax.
Yes, that was between Mix 2 and 3. That's right, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think what was what was just great about this slightly anal organisation that Kellen and I developed was that I was able to say to you, it's PD20-176 you need to pull out. And because of my experience with having worked with you, but also worked in the music industry for a while, sometimes I could just go pull it up 6 dB, knowing that would be right.
Yeah, absolutely right. There's a little thing we did here where you wanted the guitar panning left to right rather than right to left, so I went through and changed that and there's little things like that.
The kind of
when you heard it with my panning, it didn't make sense. So it's like, for example, because originally you had it going one way.
Yeah, and I think it's a previous kind of pylon to it was in the left, and then it was the left again, and so it's all of those kind of internal logic.
And then I did this lovely little orchestral section. We turned that up. I balanced that more after the first take. Let's have a little listen to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that was one of the biggest, I think, achievements for you. I never really presented you that section with any cohesion. I wanted the sense of cacophony, but also wanted to hear all the wonderful contributions people had made.
I really enjoyed, I could get into this and rebalance it, make those sections kind of more how I heard them, knowing that you'd spent so long on the arrangement that you gave me sections like that needed, because the motors was what you wanted, and that was your kind of thing, and then the other bits I kind of took on as a kind of, right, I'm going to turn them into something really interesting in a mix, and maybe spot things you hadn't spotted, or make more of things, mainly with volume and pan, to make it really fit into how I felt the mix was going.
For me, the last few notes I gave you were in response to me doing the video.
Yes, yeah, that's as important, of course.
Absolutely, and I just felt, for example, that the didgeridoo wasn't loud enough at the end. It was featured. And then also what I felt, just from an artistic point of view, is that you put a lovely reverb on my piano pulse that begins the piece and ends the piece. And whilst I had nothing against that reverb, I thought, I really want to start in the room, as in this room, this shed. So that was one of the very last things you did, is you just automated the reverb in and then out at the very end. You
can see that here on the screen there. So it started off, and then I just brought it in from under here, underneath the amazing lawnmower, and then it came in there, and then again at the end you can see. So you can hear the audio going and the reverb just dying. There you go. And here I'm automating the returns rather than the sends, because obviously I want to be able to control the reverb return, not the send. Some things I do automate the send. On this occasion, not so.
Great stuff. And final part of the puzzle was that we didn't have time to send this to a mastering engineer, so you performed that task as well.
Yes, I did. And I just put and I tend to, when I'm doing a mix, I'll put a compressor and an EQ across the mix, because that's something I should do. Some people have actually asked about some of the questions about compression, and I compressed individual elements to help the mix and to help the sound. And then I just put one bus compressor across the whole mix.
And is that a parallel compressor?
No, that's just a traditional bus compressor. I don't use parallel compression. Certainly not for a mix like this. I don't think it would work. For the mastering, I put just a few other secrets and a limiter on it, just so I could turn it up like an extra dB or so, and to just make it loud but not too loud. You know, I was conscious of dynamics.
Well, that was going to be the nightmare for me, is it just turning into sausage meat, and it just not. I mean, for me, it was just to be able to take people on a journey, for it to be bloody loud when we got to the end, but not necessarily something that you needed to worry about someone listening to on a plane, for example, where there's less bandwidth. However, Jake, I'm right in saying that the sausage meat days are kind of behind us, aren't they?
Yeah, fortunately, the sausage days are, and that's one of the things we do have to thank the streaming sites for, because they're worried about people listening to different genres on shuffle, is that they have a system that I have researched but not in massive detail, but I know they Spotify, for example, use called something called LUFS, which is a kind of full scale loudness thing, and it analyzes, when you upload to Spotify, it analyzes the sausage and gives it a reading, and then adjusts it so that reading, so that every piece of audio matches that reading, so that if it's a really loud Oasis track, for example, or a soft piano thing, it turns down the Oasis track and turns up the piano thing, so that if you listen one to the other, you won't hear Oasis as Oasis wanted it to be, but you'll hear it at a similar dynamic.
Basic health and safety thing, because if someone's turned their device up because they're listening to a bit of Ella Fitzgerald, which may be like 20 dB quieter, then I think Oasis is a great example, because they really were sausage meat.
Particularly the first album, they really,
caned it. And then so you're listening to something that's 20 dB quieter, and then suddenly an Oasis track comes in, literally blow your ears off.
That was that. So I wanted a little bit of gain. As you can see, I put it up a dB and a half, so not much, and I just made sure it was only ever limiting by about half a dB, so it's not much. It's just to help just make it all just a tiny bit louder, really.
Thank you so much, Jake, for taking on this heinous gauntlet, especially considering the circumstance we're in with you not being up here. I have to say, this is probably one of those occasions where us working remotely probably suited the project, simply because of the time constraints.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we would have had a similar result, but I think it certainly helped that we could both work at the same time, because it ended up being a mammoth mix for me. It also meant I could come to it when I was often inspired at different times of day, and it was like, I want to just go and work on this for a couple of hours and get it. But it also just meant that you could listen when you were ready to, and that kind of stuff. So it really did help.
And Jake, if I were to suggest to you that I may take this on a slightly longer form journey, would you be against working with me on that?
No, the amount of enjoyment I got out of mixing this piece, then I would absolutely love to take it further.
Well, listen, Jake, it would be great if you play it down for us and run your Pro Tools session, so we can have a look at your handiwork. Do stick around, because after we play it down, I'm going to announce who I'm going to be giving some very special gifts to. But for now, Jake, thank you so much.
Pleasure, mate. Nice one. Thanks everybody else as well. Great. I mean, great job, everyone, and great job you, Christian. It's an amazing piece of music.
Oh, thanks, mate. And I think that this is just an astounding mix, a standing testament to your skills. So until next time, mate. Thanks again to everyone's contributions. I just wanted to mark out a few individuals who just went that extra mile or really hit the mark. What I'm going to be doing is gifting these individuals a copy of Stratus, which is a new, wonderfully therapeutic library that we've done with Olafur Arnolds. So here are the recipients of this gift, courtesy of Spitfire Audio.
Hello, my name is Heather Hayes, and I'm a professional musician and composer out of the Washington, D.C. area.
Hello, I'm Keith Diodasio.
I'm Phil Ducking. Welcome to my small home studio. You can see I have a wide variety of instruments, but I thought in the spirit of the experiment, I would look for something with a little bit less tonal range.
And as I mentioned before, I really wanted to give away 6 copies of Albion to an educational facility who joined in with MB300S.
Hi, I'm Ian Tipping, and what you're about to hear is the UOB Vocal Explorations Ensemble's contribution to Piano Book Piano Day 2020.